fish. And he goes, no, dude, I was here to help you fish. We had both thought we were disabled. Who's guiding who? And the slow-mos you take with Aeroflight, what are those frames usually?
120.
Those are 120?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Terrible idea. Terrible.
Yeah.
But yeah, they did a 28-day float.
That would be badass. Just living out of the raft.
I can't fathom going in the woods for 28 days and having enough stuff with you for 28 days.
Yeah.
Right? There's one in the next room that's big. 7-footer.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be totally down for that. So
Kayaks, the whole deal, man.
yeah, so hunting.
And then you
coastal
could go
bears.
net stuff in the evenings for dinner or whatever. I mean, Alaskan adventure.
I would be totally down for that.
Yeah,
what's that- I'm
what's
for
that
real.
cost, though?
I mean,
So that's all boat access and stuff, right?
Yeah.
You're talking about bear hunting, and I have a hard
kayaks. I mean, we just bring inflatable kayaks. You got the money.
time. Sound like you die. I do not have the money.
You do.
Everything's invested in my business.
Oh,
dude.
I know, but then we
Oh,
better.
you're a rich business owner. I was like, no, I'm a business owner that's heavily invested. There's a very big difference.
Every
Yeah.
business owner's that way, yeah.
It's not going to cost more than what it would cost you to go to Canada this year.
Really?
I don't think so. No.
I don't
Yeah.
know. That was pretty cheap.
Yeah, that was pretty
Yeah.
cheap.
Not cheap for not going.
By the time you got gas, your time, the whole thing, yeah, I think it'll be very similar, and the quality will be considerable. Let's pop that tops on. Mm-hmm. Another pod. Welcome to the pod, Drew Howerton, in the hizzle for shizzle dizzle. Drew's been. I'll intro Drew really quick. Drew's been trying to guide me up a bear all spring, and he's
Failing miserably?
yeah, he's not a very good bear guide.
Tim's supposed to be guiding me.
No, Drew's been a friend, been on my channel a couple times, starting to hunt more together. And you're really good at hunting, man.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, no, you are. You're consistent. And you're really into archery.
Yeah.
And this is Archery Podcast. Did you know that?
No.
Yeah.
No, you weren't aware? Yeah, apparently he's not subscribed.
Yeah.
People like you that are ruining it for us.
Yeah, you're not subscribed?
Get on there.
Are you part of the 60% that's not subscribed or
I'm just
70%?
not on the internet that
Oh,
much.
yeah. That's a good place not to
Well,
be.
no, hold on, though. It's just on your YouTube channel or it has its own?
So we have its own
Because I
YouTube
am
channel.
subscribed to your YouTube channel.
Josh and Tim YouTube channel, podcast channel.
Okay.
And then it goes out to all the audio platforms now.
Oh, good.
So people can listen in their trucks or while they're on their run or whatever. But yeah, man, what did I miss in your intro? What are you into? What do you got going on?
I'm a small business owner. I'm an electrical contractor. As far as bow hunting and archery goes, got into bow hunting in like 2004. Hunted with traditional gear
Gangster, dude.
up till about 2015.
We'll get into that.
Oh,
Drew
there's
started.
something a little weird about you.
Oh, did you not know that?
Actually, no, I did.
He started the hard way, man. Yeah.
Give me the hardest path. I want to start there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you start with a recurve because you just didn't know of anything else? Like how did it come to?
No, I had a buddy who we kind of got into it at the same time, and the guy who was talking him into it was a traditional archer, and he was like, if you're not getting into it and doing a recurve, you're a fucking pussy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that kind of
So you got guilted into it, is what you're saying.
Well, I was just like, dude, whatever, cool. Let's go shoot things with arrows. That sounded like fun to me. It didn't matter. And there is the whole, what was I, 18? It's like, it was way more affordable to jump into traditional archery
That's
than
true.
it was to.
Yeah, traditional's pretty affordable.
So I would never tell anybody, like, look, if all you can afford is a recurve bow, like, who cares? Get started.
Yep, for sure. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through a recurve phase at some point.
should.
It's a scratch I want to itch to at least just get one big game animal or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you started with a recurve, and what'd you get into? Like, where'd it lead you?
I started out, bait, tree stand over whitetail.
Washington.
Oh yeah, Washington.
The Washington bait
Northeast
program,
Washington
yeah.
whitetails, dude. There's some really big bucks.
Hey, don't be telling people that.
Well, and that kind of hunting for a traditional guy is actually not terrible because you can get close and you can
it's
control your
cool.
environment. And I mean, I shot traditional for 3 years.
in my teens and killed 7 animals.
Yeah.
All that. So I mean, if you're doing the baiting, that's really not a difficult way to do it.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do it, it's a smart way to do it.
Yep.
What's the name of the guy who got you into it?
The guy that got my buddy into it, I only know his first name. It was John. I never even met the guy personally.
Really?
Yeah.
Was this the Washington Hunting Forum?
You don't
No.
you don't remember his last name?
No, I don't know.
Because my dad was friends with a guy named John Wanalock, who was a traditional guy, and they were both into that, and they both baited deer. And yeah, I think he's passed now, but he was still pretty active then.
This John guy was he was an elk hunter too, and he was, like I described him, he was hardcore traditional bow hunter. Mm-hmm. But now Wanlock doesn't sound. I don't think it was.
Right.
I think it was like a common last name.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So you smoked a couple Washington whitetails first?
Well, it started out, I had no idea about anything archery. So I just walked into Whitetail Plus there in Deer Park because that's where somebody told me to go, which doesn't exist anymore.
Yep.
And the guy down there, Greg, set me up with a old used Bear Grizzly, 50-pounder.
New to you?
A lot of those out in the world.
And some Beeman Hunter
Beemans.
arrows, right?
Pultruded hunters.
And
My dad was into those. It was like the first carbon arrow. Do you remember the outsert? Yeah.
and some 125 grain.
They're not here anymore. We had a ton of those.
Yeah.
Oh, that's my dad used those forever.
God, what were those broadheads I first used? 125
Great
grain.
Razorhead.
No, maybe Thunderheads
Magnus.
or something. They were a 3-blade.
Oh, 3-blade.
Yeah, they might
Really?
have been Thunderheads or something. I don't
That'd
know.
probably be a Thunderhead then.
But sat early archery season and had a little basket buck come in. Super excited. Shot it. It looked like maybe the ferrule went, under the skin, and that was it. Like no penetration. So that was the very beginning of my education in archery. It's like I had to figure out what went wrong, and that
For
led
starters,
me down.
you're using a traditional bow with a 3-blade broadhead.
Yeah, and an arrow that couldn't have weighed 350 grains without the broadhead on it.
Oh, no shit.
Sure, but 125 grain, now you're talking a 475. That's actually a reasonable weight
Yeah,
arrow.
that's probably a 450 grain
You're
arrow.
shooting a broadhead, most likely, that wasn't designed for penetration with a bow that needs something designed for penetration.
Right. So, yeah, that led me down the path of research and into all the
Into
stuff.
the rabbit hole.
Into the stuff that we talk about constantly with
Into the weeds, yeah.
penetration and all that. So
And you're way into it now.
yeah, I'd say I'm less into it now than I was. You dive into that rabbit hole, you get super deep into it, and then at a certain point, you just kind of settle and it's like maybe you could still improve at some point, but you get comfortable and confident with what you have, and you just kind of let it ride.
Where did you learn to tune? Because you tune your own stuff.
Yeah. Gosh, that's just little things over the years.
You kind of figured it out on your own, or?
Yeah. Yeah. With traditional, I downloaded the old Easton. You can still probably find it on the internet. It's like a 30-page,
Easton Technical Bulletin.
maybe. Yeah.
Yep.
And it's all about tuning, and it goes into compound stuff too, but it was really good for the recurve.
It was
guy.
more tuning an arrow to
Hey,
to a bow.
swivel that mic so it's pointed right at you.
Yeah.
Right at the direction of you. There you go. Give it a fondle. Fondle the bottom real quick.
So the Easton Technical Bulletin is about how to get the appropriate arrow for the bow.
Right.
And the things you do to it to change it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And did it hold relatively true for traditional archery?
Yeah, it'll hold true for compound too. It's just there's a lot of ways to tune a traditional bow actually, and it's amazing how many traditionalists don't have a clue how to, but you can shorten or lengthen the string, raises or lower the brace height. It makes the bow faster or slower, makes it react stiffer or weaker. Moving the knock point up and down gives you knock high and knock low, just like paper tune. It's no different. They typically use shafts. It's more common to use a shaft tune in that scenario with a recurve, because then your plucking comes into play more and you'll see it more.
Absolutely.
But yeah.
That carried into my, I still shaft tune
Yeah.
with a compound. So it's just what I got comfortable doing, and you can do just as good of a job. I think it probably takes longer.
Then which kind of tuning?
Paper tuning.
So do you shoot your broadheads?
Yeah, I basically end up broadhead tuning. I'll get a bear shaft pretty close, not perfection, because ultimately you'll probably end up changing it a little bit once you put your broadheads on anyways. And then I broadhead tune after that.
So just out of curiosity, because when you shaft tune and you broadhead tune, you're doing the exact same thing.
Yes.
You agree, right?
Yep.
movements are the same, changes are the same. Why wouldn't you just broadhead tune?
When you skip right to it?
Yeah, you're doing the same thing.
Well, I want to get it close.
So the shaft is more likely to have an erratic change than a broadhead's going to if you have a fletched arrow. So, i.e., like let's say you fire it at 20 yards to start, right?
Yeah.
Or 16.
Yeah.
It's technically supposed to be 16, right?
Yeah.
But if you shoot it at 16 and it strikes the target and takes off to the right, the arrow without fletchings on it is going to strike the target harder in that direction than a fletched arrow with a broadhead would, but they'll both do the same thing. You are more likely to damage or break an arrow shaft tuning than broadhead tuning.
Really?
As long as when you're broadhead tuning, you shoot your broadhead, then you shoot your field point. Shoot your broadhead after your field point, sure. You run problems. But there were multiple times, because I shaft tuned.
Yeah, you always shoot your broadhead first.
Mind you, I was taught how to tune a recurve, no different than you learned how to tune a recurve. My dad taught me which way to move, how to raise and lower your brace height, how to raise and lower your knock point, how to shorten or cut down or lighten tip weight to change spine.
Did you learn everything from your dad, or did he like give you a base and then you expand on it?
My dad taught me traditional. My dad didn't know jack about compound.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Did you have compound mentorship?
Not really. Okay. Now, granted, I worked with Dan Evans for a little bit, but Dan worked in the archery department. I worked in boots. We rarely worked together. And I knew what I knew about tuning bows pretty much then. There was more I learned over time of just trying to troubleshoot something. The most valuable thing that I was ever granted was trying to figure out things that nobody could figure out.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get this bow to tune. Well, what's it doing? They walk me through it and hand it to me and say, figure it out. Well, whenever I'd get one of those that nobody could figure out, I'd wait for everybody to go home, and I'd fuck with it all night if I had to, and start experimenting, going, okay, well, what causes what? What do I change, and what's the reaction of change? And that's where my knowledge came from. I was relatively self-taught. There was a gentleman that worked at the Outdoor Sportsman when I first started working in the archery department named Alan, and he had some basic knowledge and taught me a little bit, but it wasn't much. It wasn't like anything I didn't already know from just shooting a bow when I was younger before I started working there. But I'd learned everything I know about traditional archery from my dad, and the fundamental rules are the same.
Yeah.
And it's tricks you can do with a compound that nobody even thinks about. But the making the arrow right for it, and what I learned when I was trying to take it a step beyond, I bought a Hooter shooter machine, eliminate the human error, and try to ultimately super tune a bow, i.e. take the person out of it, get the shaft and the field point to hit in the same spot. And I ran into a bow probably like 3 months in that I could not get to stop shooting a shaft low right, no matter what I did. Didn't matter what I did, didn't matter what I changed, didn't matter what I fucked with. It shot low right. And I kept messing with it, and I was about to the point to giving up, and I went, I'm curious. I wonder. Because I'd always seemed like, I would paper tune with a compound because it would get you close, and then I'd immediately broadhead tune. Yeah. I would skip the shaft step. I said, just for kicks, screwed a broadhead on the fletched arrow, and it smacked the shaft 4 times in a row out of the shooting machine. A broadheaded arrow and a shaft will go in the same spot.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's why I don't shaft tune. Like, what is the point of that if I'm going to broadhead tune? Now, if you're shooting mechanical broadheads, I totally get it, because a mechanical broadhead will hide things.
But what ended up being your fix for your low right?
I sent the bow back.
You sent the bow back?
I sent the bow back. There was something wrong with it. I think the limbs were misdrilled.
Oh, damn. I thought that was going to be like some kind of breakthrough in tuning.
No, it was the moment in which I realized that your broadhead and your shaft are always going to go in the same spot, because it was so erratic.
Yeah.
Like, it was like at 20 yards, it was like 14 inches off.
Oh, wow.
And it didn't matter where I moved it. So, but I was like, this is my opportunity to see if that actually, no matter what happens, the shaft and the broadhead go in the same spot. And I could touch a shaft and a broadhead every time my field point was over here. No human involvement. Pull it back and click a button, right? So that was the moment when I went, well, shaft tuning's dumb if you're going to use a fixed blade broadhead. Just use your freaking broadhead. It's what you're trying to get to hit in the same spot.
It's a redundancy.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Now, I get it. Like, if you're a target shooter, I get it, because you're not going to put a broadhead on there. It makes perfect sense.
To fully wrap my brain around that, you're saying no matter the type of broadhead other than mechanical.
Yeah, mechanical's not gonna show it very well.
Right,
it'll show it
because it
somewhat.
flies more like a field point.
It'll fly more like a field point. So then that extreme reaction that you're looking for in a shaft is more relevant if you're shooting mechanicals. But if you're shooting fixed blade broadheads, try it. Like when you next time you set up a bow and you're gonna shaft tune, and you fire them, and you've got a 6-8 inch impact difference.
Right.
Go grab your broadhead of the same weight, put it on that fletched arrow or another fletched arrow, and shoot it.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm telling you, your broadhead and your shaft are going to go in the same spot. And that's why for 7 years on YouTube, I've said you don't need to shaft tune. If you're shooting fixed blade broadheads, and if you go back and watch any video I mentioned, I say that. Yeah. If you're shooting fixed blade broadheads, shaft tuning is a waste of your time.
It's one of his rants. I've heard this.
Well, it's true.
I know. And it's people need to hear it because there's always people
let's tune an extra time
right.
that you're going to do the same thing. Because when you get your broadhead or when you get your shaft tuned just like you like it, then you pick up your broadhead.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And I've heard people say, well, the shaft will show it more. If it's a mechanical broadhead, yes. If it's a fixed blade broadhead, no, it won't. They will go in the same spot because there's usually enough surface on your fixed blade broadhead to overtake whatever the back end's doing.
Right.
You can probably close that door now.
Especially if you have that ultra FOC going.
Ultra. Define ultra, Drew.
I think ultra is defined as 30% or more.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
I just measured mine the other day because I was curious because I don't get too into the weeds on that stuff anymore, like I said.
5 and a quarter?
I was 21%.
Wow.
Dang.
Yeah.
Skippy.
You probably got a big jacked up lifted truck too, huh?
No, man. No. Not at all.
Not as jacked
but
up
I am
lifted
Italian.
as Josh's truck.
I am Italian for all the ladies out there.
He is Italian.
All the 3 ladies that are listening to this thing.
Shout out
if
to
you
them.
know, you know.
Yeah.
Are they 3 hot ladies?
Could be.
I guess that wouldn't be a bad thing.
Do you, so as this is today, what are you fired up about hunting, Drew? What are you into?
Well, the elk bug bit me in 2015 when I switched over to compound.
Same year.
Well, kind of.
Did you switch because of elk?
Yes, I switched because of elk because I wanted to do the elk hunting. I didn't want to do it in my home state because Washington blows.
It's tough.
So I was like, I'm going to invest in, hunting out of state. If I'm going to do that, I want to take tackle with me that is as proficient as possible.
Yeah, if they gave you a different season to use a traditional bow, it might be a different discussion.
Yeah,
I always thought about
absolutely.
that, yeah.
Or a
traditional
longer season.
It's just because we have such a small user group.
It's true, yeah.
They're not going to make a whole nother season for somebody else, which I'll be the first one to say, if they do that, I'd hunt with a traditional bow.
Yeah, I've advocated for not even making an extra season where you have to carve time away from the other users, but just giving traditional archers a long season that coincides with other seasons. And if it's during a modern or muzzle season, they have to wear some hunter orange or something. I would be totally into that.
That'd be great.
But yeah, to constrict a traditional bow hunter to the same season setting and time length as somebody with more proficient gear, it's just...
That was what pulled me away from traditional. That and my customer base being compound. But I thought about it. I went, if they're not going to give me a better season to use this thing, like I shot that bow every day when I got home from school for a year and a half. Right? And I hadn't shot my compound bow in like 2 years. It was sitting on the shelf. I got curious one day when I got home from school. I went, I wonder. And walked out and grabbed my compound bow and shot it twice as good as I could shoot that traditional bow that I had shot every day for a year and a half.
Yeah, it's true.
And I went, and they're not giving me a better season to use this archaic thing, right? Like, well, this is stupid.
Yeah, it takes a lot more time investment to stay good with the traditional gear.
You can't take more than like a day off at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I shot a compound bow, went target shooting with a couple of buddies from work, and they had compounds, and we're shooting, and I'm flinging a few arrows with them at 50, but I'm happy to hit the block at that range, and they're like, "Oh, you should try this," and because I'm always they're giving me shit like, "Oh yeah, you're not very good with that." And I was like, "Well, if I had a compound, I'd be just as good as you guys." And they're like, "It's not as easy as you think. It would take a lot of practice." And so I called them out. I was like, "Okay, let me shoot one of yours, and we'll see what happens." First shot, I hit the bullseye.
Yeah,
I was like, and they're like, "Oh, okay,
maybe it isn't that hard."
Yeah.
Do you think, Josh, because of the way you shoot a traditional bow, like, is it a cool way to learn because you're learning decent mechanics?
Yeah, I mean, when we had introduction to archery classes at the archery shop, we always taught on recurve.
I knew
the
that,
fundamentals are the same. They are 100% the same. Your form, your stance, your shoulders, your head position, looking through the string and getting your eye over the top of the arrow is the same thing as lining it up with the string when you're holding a compound.
Depending on how you shoot, because I didn't shoot that way at all. I shot a recurve canted.
You still shoot a recurve canted, but you get your eyeball vertically over the top of the string.
Right.
Which means your eye is in line with the arrow vertically.
Right.
You're shooting a compound, holding it vertically, your eye is in line with the arrow vertically, so it's the same premise.
Okay, I suppose I
get
get
your
that.
eyeball directly over the arrow.
Different plane, but
And
same
and I
concept.
also shot high wristed. Did you shoot your traditional high wristed versus most compound shooters shoot low wristed?
It was more of a medium to high
Was
wrist
it?
style grip, but that's just how they made them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those elbows made that way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you got the elk bug in 2015.
Yep. Decided to go into it with.
What was the first state you decided you wanted to hunt?
I went with Montana because
Because I got them bomb ass seasons.
that was a big one. Yeah, I knew
And
if
I
couldn't get it done with archery, I had an opportunity to go.
And
back.
a lot of units you can hunt.
Yeah, and then the other big thing was just the availability of the tag at that time. Mm-hmm. Montana was
Rest in
having
peace to that
leftover
availability.
tags. Yeah, Montana was having leftover tags.
Yeah.
Every year at that point because they had just raised their tag prices and people were turned off by it. So you could pick one up on your way over in August. You know.
Remember the good old days in Idaho when you could shoot your elk and then go buy another tag because they hadn't sold them all?
I've heard so many stories about that. I've never gotten to see the glory days, but I would have loved to.
I knew several residents that bought a non-resident tag as soon as they went on sale and were carrying two.
Yeah, my
All the
neighbor
time.
used to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I wonder what changed. Did they maybe mismanage the herds? Do you think?
That.
Because I mean, if you're talking about this is 10 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And there was always tags left over. There were years they didn't sell out at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And you could go buy another one, and they still had them.
And bow hunting's
Yeah,
gotten a
here.
lot cooler too.
Bow hunting has gotten
Yeah.
cooler, but they're not really selling more tags. Not in those states. They didn't expand
Yeah,
the number of tags.
Idaho has always had the same number of tags
Yeah.
allotted for
So
non-residents.
now, if you were selling them 10 years ago, and they were running out, now you can't get one past the first day, right? So, do you think maybe you're mismanaging your game? If you're running out of those tags, you're still selling the same amount. A lot of people would complain about the success rate
Right.
compared to then, because people would frequently get to a harvest too.
I mean, we all of us know what's going on right here. Yeah.
They're mismanaging things.
Yeah.
It's just a money thing, and I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Like you can't look at that resource and think it's just not going to go away if you're not careful.
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the problem is people are like having trouble even using the word resource anymore. Like,
Yeah.
that's exactly what it is. There shouldn't be any argument about it. It's a resource to be managed and used. It's not like, wildlife.
Let's call it correctly. It's a renewable resource.
Exactly.
Unless you hunt it to extinction or wipe out the
But
populace.
if you
Or
looked
allow
at the
predators to hunt
or
them
allow
too.
predators
Yeah.
to go
If you
wild.
looked at the 20
oh,
year,
yeah, that's what's different in the last 10 years.
that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, well, you should have thrown it in there, mustache.
If you
We were getting there.
if you looked at the 20-year
waiting for
timeline
it.
of Idaho, it's the introduction of those wolves, man.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
you're-
that's what I was saying when we said we all knew that is
Yeah.
wolves put a serious hurting.
Yeah, and
on,
the proliferation of them, nothing changed when they first introduced them, but as the wolves grew in population, drastic things started
and there
to
hasn't
happen.
been, there hasn't reached, or maybe it has now, the level of what do you call it when everything's at a steady, because you introduce
like a
balance.
the balance, there's a word that'll come to me, but they introduced the wolves and you introduced them to the elk that weren't used to fighting or running from wolves. It was a new
Yeah.
predator to them.
Yep.
So right away you get the spike of there's going to be a ton of animals that are unprepared for that.
Yeah.
And when it comes to managing wolves in North Idaho, it's super difficult because there's not open country
Right.
and wolves are smart.
A lot of
Yeah.
places for them to hide.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Absolutely.
just for the people that hunt wolves hard in North Idaho, they'll average days and days for one wolf, and the wolf populations are thick. And these are the people that are really good at it. It's just it's a very difficult task because everything's so thick. And
Well, when they
tough to do.
when they eradicated wolves originally, they were flying around with helicopters and assault rifles and couldn't maintain it.
Right.
And couldn't manage it. They poisoned them.
yeah,
That's how they managed to eradicate them. But even when they were trying to balance it, they couldn't. Like the Fish and Game was paying guys to fly around in helicopters trying to get the numbers down, and it wouldn't put a dent in it.
yeah.
And you think they're going to poison them now? No way.
Well, I've always heard so many glory days stories about North Idaho, and I hope I get to see them in my lifetime, because it really has the potential to host a very strong population of elk.
Oh, yeah,
They have a lot of
absolutely.
feed,
Oh, yeah.
a lot of cover. It's elk country. It's a different kind of elk country. It's thick, it's dense, it's nasty. I mean, you got to.
It's hard hunting.
It's hard hunting. It's very
Very hard
difficult.
hunting.
It's hunting on level 10.
Do you remember when Will Primos came to Idaho?
No.
He came when the glory days of Primos videos.
What year was this?
I think it was 6 or 7, like for the Truth 6 or the Truth 7. One of those. They had a tag in Idaho, and Will Primos came and hunted Idaho.
Public land?
Well, I doubt it. I don't think they really hunted public land at all. But that's not the point. When it
Right.
was over, the last sequence he said is, "I will never come back and hunt here ever again."
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where we love hunting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy. It's the hardest. It's one of the hardest places in the U.S. to hunt. elk.
It's the hardest I've seen and been a part of. It's just very, very difficult.
Nasty. Well, I haven't hunted the peninsula where it's wet upon wet upon wet, and that's a different kind of hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that might. That's why I don't say it is the hardest, because I haven't hunted in that
Yeah.
environment.
But when you're picking and choosing your seasons, I mean, elk hunting's September, kind of irregardless of where you are. So it's like, why would we go dive into the level 10 hunting when you could go to another state where it might be a little better? And that's kind of what Drew was talking about, where Washington's tough. There's elk, but it's just incredibly tough.
Yeah, another factor of it was too. I had a little bit of information for a few places in Montana. You know, just relatives. I had a friend that was went to work for an outfitter over there, so he had kind of learned a few areas and stuff. So Montana just ended up, for a multitude of reasons, being.
How many elk
state to
tags
go.
will you end up with this year?
There's an outside chance I get 3, but I think I'll end up with 2.
Have you had any since you've started elk hunting? Have you had any two bull years? You've had a couple, right?
Yeah, my in 2018 I had 2 archery bulls, and then at least 2 other years I've had at least 1 bull with a archery tackle and 1 bull with modern.
Now, the one thing that makes you're good at hunting, but the one thing that makes you interesting, like considerably more than most other hunters, is and if you were to start a YouTube channel, I would tell you, like, do it for cooking and butchering.
Yeah.
Because you go to the end of the reaches to have really good meat care, and then process it, and then it ends up on your table, and a lot of cool different recipes and stuff. So was that something that you'd always been into, or how'd that come or evolve?
I've always had a love for cooking, and so when I really got into more so elk hunting, I mean, you don't get that much meat from a deer, but when I got into elk hunting, like, you're bringing home multitude 100 pounds of meat.
When you get your first elk and you're bringing home like 225 pounds of meat or more, and you realize like that could be your meat for a small family for a year, it's pretty powerful, man.
Well, I pick them clean, and it's kind of just a thing I keep track of for my own knowledge.
Yeah, what's the most meat you brought home?
The most meat I've ever brought home was, so the total package was 420 pounds, but that included the head, which was, so I think I had like 380 some pounds of meat.
Wow.
Off of 1 bull.
That's a lot.
I want to be with you when you process up a bull, because I've only done it on my own, and I know that I'm missing some stuff, and I know that probably no one picks it better than you do.
I'm sure there's guys out there.
I'm sure there's
doing
guys that do a similar job, but I know you can't come home with more.
Somebody always does it better.
Yeah.
Right? But I think the biggest thing is it's like a labor of love for me. I truly don't mind all the work. Like, my back is so sore by the end of it, being hunched over. There's no good way to do it. But like, slowing down and just being patient and enjoying it is the best way to do it. I think it's really natural. And it used to happen to me too. You're worried about meat spoilage or attracting predators or whatever, and people just get in a hurry.
Yeah.
And so I think just being patient, slowing down, and staying in the moment is the best way to get most of the meat.
Yeah, I have a lot of technical questions that we couldn't really answer without having an elk here, but like, I'd like to see how you do the neck roast. I'd like to see how you do the ribs. I'd like to see all the meat that you carve off the neck and how you go about it. I think most of your quarters are pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
Hinds, fronts, back straps, tenderloins, but all the tertiary stuff I would like to see you do.
It's really nothing special. I don't have a problem being a hack. Like it's not like you have to cut right here and you have to do this. I mean, the more you do, the more you butcher, and I've butchered several of my own cows, so you learn a ton doing that, and you can bring that into the elk woods. But if you're on the ground, sometimes it's like, let's just get the meat off the bone, and a lot of the neck meat's going to be hamburger meat anyways, so does it have to look pretty? No.
So what's a couple of your favorite ways to cook elk?
Well, I mean, everybody loves burger. So there's tons of different burger things you can do. Hamburgers are one of my favorite, to be honest. I love putting some beef burger into my hamburger. Elk is
Some
so
beef fat?
lean. Yeah.
Beef fat.
Yeah. What did I say?
You said beef burger.
Oh, yeah. Beef fat
Yeah.
in the burger. Elk is just so lean, you know, whether you're a purist or not, it's going to be better if you put some beef fat in it.
Oh, I agree 100%. It's just dry.
Yeah. But it's hard to get, it's hard to go wrong with steaks. I like grilling them or putting them on a cast iron or whatever. But as far as like different or weird things, one thing I used to do all the time, I don't do it as much anymore just because I have a family, kids get picky. But I used to take, you've seen the Born and Raised guys kind of made the rib roll popular, where they fillet the entire flap of meat off the rib cage and keep it whole in one piece. I used to do that before they ever put it on video. They didn't invent
Damn,
that.
Born and Raised.
But anyways, I would take that thing, whether it was off a deer or an elk, didn't matter. If it was off an elk, you usually had to cut it in half to do it twice. But I would take that thing and fill it with spinach and Parmesan cheese and spices and make a braciole. You guys know what a braciole is? It's an Italian dish.
Sounds
and
delicious,
you roll
though.
it up. Yeah,
Sounds
it's got
good, yeah.
tons. It's an Italian dish. You roll it up and you tie it off and you bake it in a pot or braise it in a sauce for hours and hours and hours, and it just becomes fall apart tender.
What do you stuff it with again?
Spinach, some parsley, Parmesan cheese, Romano cheese. You could put Italian sausage in there if you want. I mean, you can get pretty creative, but yeah, it's pretty tasty.
That sounds incredibly tasty. Why didn't you bring that with you?
I did a post on it years back, and like a step by step. I'll have to dig it up and show you guys.
Yeah. You have a pretty elaborate processing space, don't you?
Yeah, developed it over the years.
I need to come over and check that out.
Oh yeah,
I'm hoping
absolutely,
to
dude. Anytime.
build a place here to.
It's ground zero
process.
for meat care, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a.
I mean,
pretty
do you
good
have
spot.
anything right now that you think like, hey, I wish I had something else, or you got all the
What
stuff
would you
need now?
change?
Um,
Since there's always room for improvement.
I don't know that I would add any equipment or anything like that, but I would just build a little bit more efficient space. Like right now, we have a really nice 3-bay commercial sink, but we don't have the space to have it permanently plumbed in one spot. I have to pull it out and hook it up with hoses, use it, and then store
Put it away.
Yeah,
Got it.
stuff like that. So, and one day I do plan to build a different space for it.
So if a person was starting out and they're like, hey, I want to start accumulating some of this stuff, where would you start accumulating?
I think the first thing you need is just a nice little 1 horsepower grinder, and
Get that burger, son.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
the main thing, man. You could do a whole animal just into burger, and then you got your steaks, and don't worry about anything else. And then you could venture into a stuffer if you want to start getting into sausage, stuff like that. And it doesn't have to be anything fancy. When I first got started, it was way before I got into elk hunting. It was, I think I mentioned this to you before while we were bear hunting. It was because we did a ton of waterfowl hunting. And one year we shot like a bazillion geese, and I had 400 and some pounds of goose meat. I took it into Eggers, and, you know, it was a pretty hefty bill for some summer sausage and pepperoni sticks and stuff.
Yeah, what did it run you? Remember?
Oh, dude, it had to be. This was way back then. It'd probably be double now, but I bet you it was $800-900.
And then for like 400 pounds, and then whatever your yield was or whatever.
Yeah, and so then I was like looking online at grinder prices and stuff, and I was like, I could literally pay for it all in one season. So I did, that's what I did. When the payback on something is 1 year, do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and if it's something you particularly enjoy doing, right?
Well,
Yeah,
and if you
absolutely.
have the space too.
Yeah.
If you have the space,
that's probably the biggest hang up, I think.
yeah, you don't need a ton of space, but yeah, having even just a decent sized kitchen, really, if you're getting started. But yeah, that was the start of it for me, and it's just over the years, just like, man, it'd be a little faster if I had a bigger grinder, or if I had a bigger stuffer, or it became efficiency at a certain point. You could do anything with the entry level stuff that I could do with the stuff I have now. It just got to a point where I can do more in a short amount of time.
Sure. Well, and time is precious.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
Yeah, and you got to put a price on it. You really do over time. And if you think about it, if you're going to grind 50 animals, 75 animals in your life, and it takes you twice as long,
Yeah.
buy that early.
That's something you
Buy once, cry
realize
once.
the older you get, right? You realize the more valuable your time is.
Oh God, I was so frugal in the early 20s, and now it's just like I'm still frugal, but it's like, yeah, but don't buy the cheap one.
Speaking of frugal, Drew, you you spend money, but you don't like to spend more money than you need to, right?
Yeah, I try to pick and choose on what I'm going to be a cheap ass about.
Yeah, and if
what
you
I'm
wanted
gonna
to
be-
save some money on your archery gear, you're at podiumarcher.com, there's a sweet little spot you can go.
There's a coupon
There's
code.
a little discount code at the end. You can just put in Tim C.
Shameless
There you go.
plug, Tim.
Shameless plug. That's our podcast sponsor right now,
That's
Josh.
true. That's true.
We're
looking for more though. I can't afford it myself, guys. Come on.
That's our sponsor right now.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool if you want to buy some archery stuff. If you're into that.
Do you have your the swirl stuff listed
Yes.
now on Podium?
Yep, it is.
Are
It
you-
was listed the day before it came in.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Are you're rocking swirl glass?
Yeah, so that's one of the things that
Don't be cheap on
you
optics,
decide
folks.
where you want to be on that. For me, optics is go big or go home.
Well, and if you buy really good stuff, it holds its value.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, you spend a lot for it, but you can also get most, if not all of your money back if you needed it at some point.
Yeah, like, do you want to be the guy decked out in Sitka gear with a pair of, Vortex
Bushnells?
Yeah, Bushnells, whatever. Or do you want to be the guy that's walking around in blue jeans in the Elkwoods, but has a pair of swirls?
can see
I
what
can
you're
tell you,
hunting.
if I see those two guys standing in the same area and I want to ask a question about what's going on, really, I'm not going up to the dude dressed in
Right.
Sitka wearing Vortex.
Right.
I'm going up to the blue jean guy with swirls because he knows something.
Yeah. And he's probably smoking cigarettes too, and that's what he uses
Probably
to check
is.
the wind.
That's his wind checker. My dad smoked for a long time.
It's a decent wind check.
He always just put the tree stand up higher.
Yeah.
Yeah, just put it higher in the
Yeah.
ground. They won't smell you.
Now,
40, 50 feet in a tree.
Drew, you're
terrifying.
like modest and humble and stuff, but you're actually really good at shooting your bow.
I guess.
I think what we found out was like a long time ago. The first time you came out and shot your bow with us, you whipped us all and didn't get invited back.
I know.
In all fairness, I was not involved in that.
Shameless plug. I was not involved.
Let's be honest, Aaron. I've never shot against Drew.
Yeah.
I've never shot with that many people. I just had the couple of guys that I originally got into archery with, and I had shot with them or by myself all my life, and I was better than them, but never really considered myself to be good, and never had anyone really to compare to. I still think, if I started going to those shoots and stuff, there'd
Yeah.
be a ton of people that would whip my ass.
Yeah, amongst the target guys, you're talking about another tier of archery.
Yeah.
But just, friends amongst friends, like you shoot good. You and I started doing the Vegas thing where we'd shoot Vegas,
Right.
and shoot around once a week when we could. And you've been up right near 300. That's really impressive, dude. We want to talk about, because the reason I like bringing this up is because I would say you're non-traditional,
Yeah, as far as my mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as your standard mechanics or whatever.
What Tim's trying to say is he's saying I'm a trigger puncher.
Nah,
Which
you're
isn't
not,
true.
You're not the worst swatter of the trigger. Actually, the first time I shot with you, you were kind of a swatter. You
I like
started
the
with
way
your
I
finger
shoot.
off the trigger.
I like the way I shoot.
That's kind of swatty. But now you let your finger settle and you pull through or whatever. But talk about how you shoot your bow, dude. Like, what's your little theory or how'd you come to be where you're at?
So this is where Tim wants me to say that I use the Force. But it's true, that's the only way I know how to describe how I shoot is I use the Force. And yes, I am a Star Wars fan.
Oh, you are, yeah, of course.
Boy.
You're Star Wars, Josh?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Wars, baby.
I think Josh's generation, everybody's a Star Wars fan, right?
You'd have a hard time not being, just because it was the first really kind of elaborate, creative thing that you ever saw as a young person. Because I mean that came out in like the late 70s. I was born in 79.
The first one,
Yeah.
But anyways, it's just I just kind of use a lot of different things that people verbalize. I couldn't really verbalize them, but when they say it, it's like, yeah, I kind of do that. I kind of do that too. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. It's there's a lot of feeling, but there's a lot of technique too.
Well, when we were driving back in the truck the other day, and you said something that I was like, yeah, that's what everyone who's good at archery. There's a similarity. Is like, you're like, hey, I got all these little checkpoints.
Right.
Right. You have all those little checks and balances of things that you're trying to do to be like a robot.
Yeah, a repeatable process. In
a sport that's nobody can really be a robot, but as close as you can be or whatever.
Yeah, it's just a basic repeatable process. And for me, like I said in the car ride home, it really doesn't start for me until I'm at full draw, because no matter what I'm doing in the bow hunting woods, I could be standing or kneeling in many different poses. So the draw process is kind of fluid. But once I hit that full draw, then it's like all those checkpoints just start to naturally happen where my anchor points lie, and it's all just a feeling. I don't run through my head like some people describe, like this, okay, then this, then this. It's just kind of all naturally happening. And I don't have we've talked about, a lot of times people have a reaction when the bow goes off, or a blink or whatever, and I seem to be pretty dead. And I think that's what allows me to get away with how I shoot. Even though I know the bow's about to go off, you'll see me like I don't have a follow through, right? When my bow goes off, my body basically stays dead still. My hand doesn't fly back and do all these pretty things that you guys do.
You know what that means, right?
What?
That means you know what's going off.
Yep.
Yes, I do. I do know that. Yeah. But what I'm getting at is, even though I know it's going off, I don't have the common reaction that would cause people to.
You're a trigger puncher that it manages to not anticipate the shot.
I guess that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Because if you know it's going off, that means you are discharging your trigger mentally on purpose.
Right, and you're going to have a reaction or an anticipation to it.
Yeah. Now I can confirm that, and I can agree with it, and it is possible to not react. It's just hard.
Yeah.
And most people can't do it.
Yeah.
Most people can't do it with success.
Right.
There's a very, very, very small percentage of the population that can do that and not react to it.
I think I heard you talking about that with another person in the shop one day, years ago, before you and I had ever even officially met. Mm-hmm. You were having a similar conversation about that, and I was just minding my own business, but in my head I was like, yeah, I think I can do that. I think that's what I do.
It probably is. I mean, if you don't ever flinch.
No, you can. I've watched myself in some of your videos. Mm-hmm. I do not move. Nothing happens.
I've never seen you flinch.
Yeah,
I never have.
I mean, it's happened.
Every once in a great while, but
yeah,
every once in a great while, someone who's pulling through the shot correctly can go, "Oh God!"
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
It's not like your brain just took a left really quickly and freaked out. But yeah, it's a very small percentage of human beings that can do that with success over a long period of time.
Yeah.
The issue normally is eventually it starts to creep up on you.
Yeah.
Like you react once out of every 5,000, and then before you know it's once out of every 1,000.
Right. Yeah.
And then it's once out of every 100, and then oh God.
And that's a mental thing, right? Because it gets in your head. So and you can go through phases of that.
Yeah.
I've had it get in my head before and go through a period of time where that's starting to happen. Mm-hmm. And then it's like, okay, time to let go of all that and retrain myself to, not flinch. It's just a focus and a mental.
If you can do it without failure, there's not a more accurate way to shoot. There's not. It's just most people can't do it.
Right. it's the same. It's the same concept of coaches trying to teach a boxer not to blink when they're about to take a fucking straight to the face.
Yeah,
I
that's
couldn't
hard.
do that. I couldn't do that.
It's hard to not go.
Yeah, here it comes. I couldn't do that, but a good boxer can.
Well, a good archer that's punching the trigger can not react to the decision to discharge the bow with the rest of their body. They can just do the one finger.
Have you gotten to watch much of Kyle Douglas shoot in person?
Yeah, Kyle's a good example of that.
Yeah.
I watched Kyle about come unglued in a tournament trying to do that and react to it.
Yeah, and that's where that mental. It's just like a golfer who falls apart, or
high stress situations are usually
or
where
a
that
major
fails
league
you.
pitcher.
Yeah,
You've seen everybody, the best of the best. It happens to them one day or another. You know,
for sure. That's it, and that's the hesitance with that style of shooting for a bow hunter. Because when are you going to be at your most heightened point of stress and concern? That blackout moment where a lot of people black out in front of the critter, right? Yeah. And that you go, I don't even remember what happened.
Yep.
Like I when I was younger, I got that a lot. I'd be like, what the frick just happened? Yeah. Now it's like I could tell you everything that happened step by step without a question. But that's one of the places where that type of archery will cheat you a little.
Yeah.
Is probably the bigger concern there. But if, like I said, if you have control over it, there's not a more accurate way to shoot. It's just less than 1% of people can control it.
You're kind of a chronic tinkerer too, a tester.
Yeah, it just my whole personality is based off of experimentation. Learning, the forever student. So yeah, I tinker a ton.
Yeah.
I mean, we just talked the other day. You laughed at me because I bought those. You'll love this. I bought those fobs. You know what those are? I just wanted to check them out, dude.
I'm like, what are those?
I wanted to check them out.
Plugs,
so I tested with them, and after a couple hours, I was like, yeah, these won't work for me. But I even altered them, cut them up a little bit, did some things.
Me at all.
Could
you effectively anchor your normal anchor point with them?
Once I cut the ring out. Yes,
exactly.
I could anchor the same way. That was the first thing I learned when I came back to full draw. I was like, oh, didn't realize that would be an issue.
Yeah, that's the problem with the fob. I don't doubt that it probably works relatively well, but you can't use a normal anchor point with it.
Yeah, and I could have taken the testing a lot further, but what ultimately ended up making me just throw in the towel before I tested everything I wanted to was they're not quiet enough.
Yeah, they're kind of noisy.
Even with the ring cut out, they were considerably louder than my Super Sabers.
Yeah.
So I was like, with the potential benefits I was thinking I might get out of them, as loud as they are, it's just not going to happen.
Gotcha. So will you rattle us through where you've landed with your setup today? What's your draw length?
30.
30, and with a 80-pound bow.
30 or 30 and a half.
I think it's 30.
Is it 30?
A long draw guy.
I might have increased it to 30 and a half this year.
Wow.
Because I shortened
you don't have big jacked up pickup?
I shortened my D-loop. Well, it's like wanting to get the most out of what you got,
it's
right?
Josh, it's one of the advantages of shooting back here.
God gave me a couple of things, and I want to get the most out of my can.
For sure.
So rattle us through the setup you landed on.
Okay, so
from bow to arrows.
I'm semi-landed. I'm at a point now where I've gone a certain direction, and now I'm at this point where I know I'm not going to go any more this direction. I may go back a little bit. We'll see how it goes this year. But I'm shooting the lightest arrow I ever have at about 575.
Did you hear the quiver in his voice when he said that? He's uncomfortable with the whole thing.
Yeah, that's 575, that's scary light for me.
Yeah, what's your bow setup?
Coming from a traditional archer that was pushing an 1100 grain arrow at one point.
Damn, son.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can outrun that arrow.
Yeah,
the bow you're shooting though.
I was running that through deer.
Oh, sure.
And probably at what do you think?
Maybe a rebar down.
You think I was 180? You think I was maybe 180 feet per second?
Hell no. Dude, that heavy? 150.
Okay, yeah.
At
I never ran any of my traditional setups through a chrono.
You wouldn't want to. It'd make you want to throw up. It's so
I don't know. I get hard for
like
that.
180 is like a 400 grain arrow going through. A
slow but
bow.
deep, right?
Yeah, right. Eased it on in there. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So, anyways, 575. I shoot a 2-blade single bevel broadhead.
Single bevy, which one?
This is also a new deal for me this year. I'm gonna shoot the Grizzly Stick, either Samurais or Maasai heads at 200 grains. Mm-hmm. I'm gonna test them both. They fly really well, and they got all the things that I like in a broadhead. Other than they're not made from a solid piece of steel like broadheads I've used in the past, but there's some reasons why I did that for ratio, 3-to-1 ratio.
Yep.
You couldn't get a 3-to-1 ratio all steel broadhead unless you go to like 300 grains.
Correct.
And that, like we discussed at that point, I'm probably not going to be able to run 250 shafts anymore.
No, now you're running
and
200s.
At that point, I'm going to be heavier than I want to be. Because if I could run a 300 grain broadhead that was 3-to-1 with a 250 grain shaft or a 250 spine shaft, that would put me at a weight that I'd really enjoy, like 675 or something. I could do that.
Yep.
But when I have to jump into a 170 or 200 spine, now I'm going to be 7 something, almost 8 maybe. And then I'm like, I don't need that.
Yeah, Victory would just make that rip TKO in a 200 that weighed 1/10 of a grain an inch heavier.
I just found out.
You're done, and you're making some lethally indestructible stuff with that.
Oh, yeah. I just found out the other day that the Grizzly Stick tapered shaft arrows, have you seen those? Victory makes those. I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yep,
Yeah.
they do. Yeah, they took that over, I think, 4 years ago.
Which is a super cool concept. The arrow is tapered from its thickest point at the head of the shaft.
So, like a lot of your high-end target arrows are tapered. Like
Are
that.
they?
Yeah, because a tapered projectile does a couple of things. One, it makes it stiffer without it making it weigh more.
Yes.
So by making it smaller on one end and bigger on the other end, it's actually stiffer without adding the weight.
And that's how I could.
And you can manipulate the length of it, changes the spine. So you can cut off of like the tapered end
or
make it stiffer.
Yep, you can cut off
at
either
a different
end.
ratio than if it was just straight.
This is very interesting stuff.
Oh, it's
problem
sweet,
with that is
dude.
knowing exactly how much you cut off each end when you go to get new arrows a year from now.
Yeah.
And trying to duplicate what you
Yeah,
made.
you definitely want to track all that, have it written down, or
Yeah, there were arrows way back when from a company called Aerodynamics, which I don't think they're around anymore, but they were 11/32 in the front half of the arrow, and then it tapered all the way back to a 204 204.
Oh, really? The taper didn't start till halfway, huh?
Yeah, so you could cut off the
Interesting.
front and it wouldn't change the spine.
Interesting.
So the arrow stiffness was the arrow stiffness, and you cut it down. And that was one of the arrows that we tested for drop, and it dropped the least at the same weight. So like if you took a traditional straight arrow and shot it at 90 yards and then a tapered arrow that weighed the same,
Just blowing my mind.
it wouldn't drop as much. It's a wild concept. It's hard. The biggest issue I've seen over the years, because tapered arrows have been around a long time, consistency.
Oh,
They
really?
are not consistent at all. Now,
Has Victory fixed that with those Grizzly Stick arrows?
not the ones I've seen.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I've never had them in hand.
I've had them run through the shop multiple times. Everyone I've checked, like they're crooked, like
and
really crooked.
So the variance is in the straightness, not the.
Well, I think that it's hard to maintain the uniformity too, because as you're how are you tapering it? Well, you're reducing the amount of material as it goes down. Like there's tapered arrows that are the same internal but different on the external, and then there's tapereds that the internal and external change together. So there's a whole bunch of different options like that are a little bit crazy. Like X10s are tapered on both ends. ACEs are tapered on both ends. ACEs are tapered equally on both ends. X10s are tapered longer in the back and shorter in the front, but still both tapered. Those are the high-end target arrows that people use for tournament archery. Right. You know, they're 400, 500 a dozen for shafts.
Oh, geez.
They're barreled. And then they made an X10 Pro Tour at one point where the front was all the same diameter and the back was tapered. So a compound guy could cut it down and it wouldn't drastically change the spine.
Yeah.
But yeah, and there's been multiple arrows. Carbon Tech made a tapered hunting arrow where only the one end was tapered. It was called a Rhino, if I remember right. Really cool arrow, really neat concept. So the penetration-wise, like I want to say it was Shepley did a bunch of studies on like torpedoes. Like before he was into archery stuff, I think he had a military history or something, but he had some experience in torpedoes. And the best penetrating projectile was slightly larger in the front than the back.
Yep, absolutely.
So if your arrow could get smaller,
that's natural design, right?
right? If your arrow could get smaller, yeah, right. If your arrow could get smaller as it went, it would penetrate better.
I think that's
And it would
for
store energy.
other reasons.
Yeah. So you didn't finish. You got your arrow,
Sorry.
and then take us through your bow sight, all that stuff. That's
Last year, I jumped ship, I guess you could say, and did a Bowtech. The guys at SVA talked me into giving Bowtech a try. Dude,
biased bastards.
It's been one of the best choices I've made as far as gear changes I've ever done. I love my Bowtech.
I mean, there might have been logical reasons for why it would be better.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's how I don't get sold.
We're not just insanely biased and are cramming things down people's throats. They actually function better.
Yeah.
Conjunction junction.
Something like that.
Dude, Bowtech makes a solid product.
Yeah.
And being a dude that loves to do all his own tuning and stuff, I mean, it offers so much tunability that
Dude,
Yeah.
I've been stoked on that.
yeah. So yeah, Bowtech.
What is it though? Bowtech what? Is it a Revolt?
Revolt X80, yeah.
Revolt
Yeah,
X80.
We're getting back into that big truck thing
Yeah.
again. Revolt X80 that's like maxed out with twisted strings, and I don't even know what I'm drawing.
You're trying to get up to
Tweaky
that
little
90-pound
modification.
hammer,
Dude,
son.
I think that I thought that damn last chance bow scale, the handheld one, I thought it was broke because I haven't got it to work for a year.
You
But
just
then I
exceeded
pulled
what it can pull.
I must have, because I pulled my kids back
Well, you
with
have
it like 5 times in a row, and it worked every
You
time.
have an HS3, right?
I think so. Yeah.
So next time you've got your bow at the shop, have them try the HS4 that we have behind the counter and see if it'll
That'll be a
scale
good
it.
test.
Okay. Yeah.
Because it's the newer version of that scale. It's like a lot beefier, a lot nicer. I don't know if it'll max out or not.
I'll have to
but
try it.
Yeah,
So
they make
Revolt-
a wall mounted version too if you want to actually.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, or you can put it
now
on
that I
your
have a drawboard, I could do that.
You can integrate it with your drawboard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Revolt XL,
Yeah.
strings,
X80.
X80.
Yeah.
The strings are the you just got the same strings this year. What are they again? A3. The A3 bloodline fibers.
Yeah,
I've
those
been
are on
super
my
happy
Matthews.
with those.
Yeah.
All black.
Black on black, son.
I haven't noticed any issues with any fraying or anything. I think they're definitely gonna hold up as far as not needing to wax them.
Yeah.
They're super slick, right? Have you noticed that? Which does hinder a little bit with tying stuff on, but I didn't notice it to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, if you're gonna wax something, wax that ass, not your strings. You know what I mean? So you got A3 strings, and then what kind of sight? What kind of sight and rest? That's all.
I've got the black gold Pro Sight 3-pin with the micro pins. I'm really a micro pin fan. I think. I don't know. I just think they're way better, dude. The bigger
agree.
pin,
I
you
use
can't
small
be
pins.
as accurate. Like it's just that whole aim small, miss fall.
Now I could see it in that site because you got multiples to maybe have like your first pin bigger and then your other one smaller.
You could, yeah. I didn't
So
do
you're
that,
not- But that because the only negative to a small pin is you lose light a little faster.
yeah,
So like if you had a bigger pin on your close one,
yeah,
you get another 5 or 10 minutes of shootability
yeah. That's
in a low
true.
light situation. But what rest are you using?
The new Epsilon. Well, it was new last year.
Yeah.
Bomb proof so far. So far,
Yeah,
so good.
yeah. I've been super happy with that.
That's a great
With
rest.
that rest.
It really is.
You can't really go wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's a little tight to get some of those Allens, but I mean that's going to happen.
Yeah,
if
where
you're
the
gonna make a
adjustments
compact
are.
sight. Yeah,
where the adjustments are. I wish they kind of thought about that a little more.
Yeah.
Because they are difficult to get at, especially if it's like a Matthews with that tapered angled cable guard thing.
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
then
yeah.
you really can't get at. I mean, you need a little stubby wrench just to get in there and pop it loose.
Yeah.
And then the up and down adjustment, the little when it's underneath it too.
yeah, and I mean you
That's
got to
it,
have
yeah.
like a
I wish
you
they
got to
put
have
that
like a
somewhere else.
coke addict's fingernail to get
Yeah,
that thing.
you
You
do.
know?
It's so hard to get at. I like put one finger on either side of it. God, I wish they would have thought that one through a little differently. Maybe a revision in the near future.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a new version coming or something would be kind of cool. Although I doubt it. They'll probably make that thing for 4 or 5 years before they change it. But
Yeah.
that's really my only gripe. Personally, is trying to get at that screw to move it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Drew did a good job. He didn't get us canceled today,
I don't think
so
so.
that's cool.
Yeah. I think he's got a hidden jacked up truck somewhere.
Fires.
We haven't seen.
You see that fire, Drew?
It's still going.
Is it?
I see a little
Fire's out. Fire's out. Pod's over. Tell the people to subscribe to the channel, Josh.
Hey, let's subscribe, people. Come on. We said 5,000. We're not even at 2. Give me a subscription.
5,000.
Pretty please.
If you're coming up, Josh, they're scrolling social media. They bring up their YouTube channel. You know what it should say on their phone?
What?
It should say subscribed. That's
One would assume.
Yeah.
One would assume.
Just pretend you have Josh looking over your shoulder. What would be the right thing to do?
Just click the button.
Click the button. Next pod, let us know if you want to have Drew back on. Yeah, Drew's local. Did you like him?
Here we go.
We're way ahead now, Josh Jones.
Oh, man. I still got to edit that one from the other day.
We're so far ahead.
So far ahead.